The United Nations Human Rights Office says it has found evidence of a mass grave in Sudan's West Darfur region. At least 87 people were buried there last month. The UN office says it has credible information that the breakaway Rapid Support Forces, paramilitary, and their allies carried out the massacre. It says many of the buried people belonged to a non-Arab ethnic Masalit group. Their bodies were dumped in two shallow graves near the city of Geneina. Ethnic violence has escalated in recent weeks, with rival military factions at war for months now. Let's bring in Saif Magongo. He's a spokesperson for the UN Human Rights Office in Nairobi in Kenya. Now, your office broke the news of the mass graves. What other details can you tell us about what you found?
Well, we spoke to witnesses who have fled the region of Geneina, the town of Geneina in West Darfur region towards Chad, and they gave us consistent testimonies of the deliberate prevention of the burial of mostly Masalit people in the cemetery in Geneina. As you know, there's been a lot of fighting and attacks on civilians in Geneina from the Rapid Support Forces and backed up by their Arab allied militia, and many people have been killed. But when people have been killed, they also prevented from being buried in the cemetery in Geneina, and that's how now they end up forcing the villagers to throw them in these ditches. And we found credible evidence of this one specific mass grave in which at least 87 people have been buried.
Can you tell us how this mass grave is connected to the fighting? Are these people sought out and targeted deliberately?
Yes, indeed. There is deliberate targeting of civilians, and it's connected because people have been killed in this area in very large numbers by the RSF and their allies. And what really adds insult to injury is they won't even give them the dignity of being buried by their loved ones in a place that they can go and visit and to be given a dignified burial. And that is the callous and disrespectful treatment of the dead, which is a stark violation of international law, is what has made us come out today very quickly to spotlight this situation and to, in the hope that it gets investigated and those responsible held to account, and it doesn't happen again.
The RSF has denied responsibility and says it will cooperate with an investigation. How credible an offer is this?
Well, we welcome all offers for investigations, but investigations have to be impartial, independent, and effective. We ourselves have not yet received that communication from them, but all investigations are welcome, and hopefully those responsible are held to account. And this doesn't happen again in this region or anywhere else in the country amid the ongoing fighting.
Saif Magongo, thank you so much. He's a spokesperson for the UN Human Rights Office in Nairobi.
Thank you very much for having me.
Local people were forced to dispose of the bodies in a mass grave, denying those killed a decent burial in one of the city's cemeteries. At least 37 bodies were buried on the 20th of June in a 1-meter-deep mass grave. Another 50 bodies were buried on the same site the next day, including bodies of 7 women and 7 children.
Carl Skembri is in charge of Sudan operations for the Norwegian Refugee Council. Here's what he had to say about the latest developments.
Well, there is very little yet that we know beyond what has been announced today by the United Nations. What we do know is that Darfur is the seat, is the theater of widespread atrocities. We see that through our own staff, many of whom had to flee. Many fled through to South Sudan or other areas in the country itself, but they've fled from massacres, from all sorts of attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure. All our offices and warehouses have been looted. So it's total mayhem. It's catastrophic for the civilians there. And today is the ultimate proof, if you like, that these atrocities are really being committed, and we need to get to the bottom of who did this, and these people need to be held accountable.
Over the past days, we've also been reporting, of course, on the fighting in and around the capital, Khartoum. How is Darfur linked to the ongoing fighting?
Well, Darfur, the dynamics there are slightly different in that there is a huge ethnic component to the fighting that we're seeing around Darfur, which is historical, and it's what led to previous ethnic cleansing and genocides, and God forbid that's probably what's happening right in front of our eyes. The fighting in Darfur took a bit longer to start, but once the Khartoum was in total chaos, there has been this opportunistic rise in violence over there, obviously linked to the rest of the country, but also with its own dynamics, making it an extremely difficult scenario. It's completely out of bounds for us as a humanitarian organization right now. We cannot operate safely. A lot of our staff are fleeing for their lives. A lot of the people fleeing from Darfur are actually injured. They're in very bad conditions. Many of them are not even managing to make it out alive.
Kaz Kemri, thank you very much for joining us there from the Norwegian Refugee Council. He's in charge of Sudan operations and was joining me there from Nairobi.